mall, how are they going to get there? They can't ride their bikes, there isn't any sidewalks, and are we going to have another little links mode of transportation, or what are we going to have to get them to their point C? And again, it's got to be convenient, otherwise we're going to lose the revenue from it, it's going to be pointless. Thank you.
You're next. And then I'll go back to Ms. Pisano with another new question.
I think something that we have to agree on here is that we don't have any mass transportation right now. Links is used as a necessity. People get on that bus every day because of a need, because they don't have transportation to get to work. Even Links will admit, and probably many in this room, we don't get up every day and decide, are we going to catch the bus to work? Do we have an extra 3 hours to spend on the bus? Or are we going to drive to work? I mean, this is a reality of what we're talking about. We have to start somewhere with Sunrail. We have to start somewhere because our roads are clogged, because we have to have alternatives for people to get where they're going. But like many of you can agree, if we go downtown, my office isn't downtown, my office is on Michigan and Bumpy. So how do we get from point A to point B? But when it comes to funding, we have to be creative. We have to look at the private sector. We can't afford it. But we don't want to stop, our future and moving forward because we can't afford it. We can't always keep saying that. So we have to be creative and find other ways, but we have to develop a mass transit. When we had an opportunity years ago, North Carolina now is blessed to have that. So in the moving forward, I think we need to bring these options up, but look for alternatives for funding. Thank you.
Ms. Pisano, we'll start the question with you. Another question from the audience talks about recent history has a cloud of the lobbying influence of the expressway. How do you restructure the express authority? Let me follow up this. With including that, what other areas of government, specifics now, within the county government, do you think, this is one department we've got to add on to it, or we need to restructure because it's not really doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's kind of broadening a little bit too much or expanding a little too much. What areas, give us specifics here? You mentioned about the express authority here, but how would you restructure other parts of county government? And what areas would you restructure?
There are so many. The first one is the planning and zoning department. Again, municipalities are leaving, so the county's going to be losing some of the funding. Windermere, some parts of Maitland, and definitely Belle Isle, Edgewood, all now do their own planning and zoning and building department things. We've got to make things more convenient. Another department is purchasing. Do you know, in the fire department, they're paying $83 for a pair of shoes for each fireman twice a year, when they could get the same pairs of shoes for $35. And the reason is the purchasing department will not look at their guidelines. They don't want to go 6 blocks out of their little map area, which it's still a local business here in Orlando. There is so much waste going on. It's just, every day I learn more things. I also think we need to look, like I said before, the leases of these huge buildings where we're spending astronomical amounts when there's so much commercial space on the market where we can put more departments together and streamline them. Emergency management department, why can't Orlando and Orange County both have the same emergency management department? That is something as well. So I think those are just some of the things, and the police and sheriff departments should be able to do some things as well. Thank you.
I'll go with Ms. Jacobs. Ms. Jacobs, what areas would you restructure in the city of Orlando and the government entities here that you see that need to be restructured? As Ms. Pisano just gives the specifics.
So one of the things that I did out in West Orange County when I had an opportunity to serve for 8 years was to pull all of our, we had 4 cities as well as the city of Orlando. A lot of overlap, a lot of enclaves, a lot of areas where Orange County had to cross over city areas in order to provide fire service, in order to provide code enforcement. It wasn't the most efficient way to deliver the services. And so what we did was work together to, especially in the area of code enforcement, to do a better job of serving this area without redundancy. Until recently, it hasn't been legal to enter into long-term agreements for governments to kind of cross over boundary lines and provide services outside with the exception of you have Belle Isle and a few situations like that. I also work with the legislature to bring forward a piece of legislation that makes it easier for us to enter into long-term agreements. And so I think especially when it comes to public safety, code enforcement, environmental protection, fire protection, all of those areas, we need to look at our enclave areas. We need to make sure that we are not duplicating our resources. But I don't support a total consolidation that Orange County tries to force down the city's backs.
Mr. Clark, you're next. Is the consolidation? Is that Ms. Jacobs kind of alluded to? It's just you don't support consolidation. That's pretty much a code word because again, we're trying to get specifics on what area would you try to make government, I guess, a little bit more efficient here, and what areas would you restructure? Again, in certain areas we talk about consolidation, or would you just go after a few departments, or what areas?
Years ago, the voters in the charter election wanted a consolidation committee, and it met, and I don't think it really did the justice that it was supposed to do. When you talk about consolidation, it's very, very difficult to look at consolidating fire departments, police departments, fire departments especially because we already operate as one big organism anyway because we have so many mutual aid agreements and you have so many insurance issues that we run into. Where I would look to consolidate some administrative pieces of Orange County government, I would look to have very much stronger joint planning agreements with municipalities so that we don't find ourselves in annexation issues where they're taking our property and fire stations and so forth. The one area we really need to look at, if the City of Orlando begins to transport EMS, we need to look at consolidation of transport issues across this community. We already have pretty much a standard medical direction. I think it would behoove us to do that. I think we would have a much stronger system. It would be revenue positive and it would help offset some of the fire rescue costs. The other issue would be to look at some of the softer services, and that would be parks, things that the county does and the city would do also. Past that, I think once you get into municipality versus county, you run into a lot of difficulties and a lot of issues. But fire rescue, joint planning agreements, parks and rec, those types of things I think could be done internally. Look at the administrative structures within Orange County and look at what's needed based on what we're having to do now because of the downturn in the economy.
You're next, Ms. Thompson. Followed by Mr. Falconer.
I think as we get further down the line, you're going to see that it's tougher to come up with new areas that we could restructure. But I'll try to step back a little bit. I'm a small business owner. My husband and I have a couple small businesses. I have a background in working with the small business community. And I had the privilege a couple weeks ago of meeting with a gentleman who's owned a company over on Orange Avenue for years. He did about $5 million in sales last year, and the economy, it's bad. And he had to find a way to find some cost savings. And he cut his overhead 51% in his business without laying off a single employee. I think it's that mentality that a business owner has that we have to bring to the county. It's, Christy Delk, I see you in the audience. Christy's got a couple of businesses right here in East Orange County. Very large businesses. One's the #1 franchise in the country. And when she opened her second branch, she had to find a way, to deliver services to her customers, and at the same time bring revenue in. I think there's a mentality a small business owner brings to the table. And I would also go further and say, of the 4 people sitting up here running for this office, I'm the only one that I don't know the ins and outs of government because I've never been there. Everybody up here has either made a career out of working for the government or has spent 20 years, let's say, with the county. I think we need a fresh start and we need a small business mentality in there.
Mr. Falconer.
Thank you, Ed. And I want to say, you mentioned the Expressway Authority. I'm the only candidate running for Orange County Mayor that has pledged to repeal the toll increase without reservation. I think it's an unfair burden on the citizens, and it's going to build a state road in another county. I've written a 234-page book on how to regionalize services and save taxpayer money. My ideas are so that we don't have overlap and duplication. I'm going to start with building, planning, fire. We have 2 SWAT teams in Orange County. We have 2 bomb squads. We have 2 mounted patrol teams. We have 2 or 3 or 4 of everything. We have 10 building departments, 8 fire departments, and 25 HR departments. And I have to keep saying this over and over again because everybody to my right has been there for at least 6 years. They didn't consolidate a single thing. In fact, they increased the budget by $1.3 billion in those 6 years. So if you want 4 more years of high taxes and high employment, you have 3 career politicians to choose from. But if you want a lower economy, lower taxes, and a better economy, I'm your best choice for Orange County Mayor.
Mr. Ruby, you're next.
Thank you. As a small business, first I want to say I did work with the federal government for 7 years, and I'm very proud of that because I served military families, veterans. I helped people with their FEMA in 04 and 05 during the hurricanes so people could rebuild their lives. I also worked on appropriations of transportation funds to Orange County. I'm proud of that experience. I'm proud of serving the people of Florida for 7 years. But when we're going to talk back to this issue, we do have to consolidate. We have to look at areas and we have to be creative. As a small business owner, as married to a contractor who employed 96 people at one time when we were doing well, these are real jobs. Something specific that I want to talk about are contracts, private contracts in Orange County. We are offering the world in corporate welfare to these major companies that come here, but we're ignoring the people who are right here in Orange County right now. I bet there isn't one business owner in this room who wouldn't want to go back home on Monday and hire one more person. We've got to give those incentives there. We've got to stop giving away the world to the people so they'll move here and like us and want to be here, but actually help the 80% of small businesses that are here in Orange County right now. Thank you.
Mr. Siegel, you're next. Followed by Ms. Stewart.
Thank you. First of all, I'm going to answer your question. First of all, Lydia, I want to hear more about those fire shoes, and I mean it for sure. You asked how we save money internally. I think I mentioned earlier the EPD. I want to make sure that they're not duplicating EPA, the state DEP and the water management districts. Second of all, I'd like to make sure we look at privatizing road maintenance. Number three, the jail. I think we can, again, save money at the jail and enhance our revenue. Second of all, we're talking about consolidation. We folded that in. I think that is a great panacea. Those cities enjoy their particular quality of life the way they want to. And time again, we look at see if we can save money, and there's not always a lot of savings, and it's not always about saving the last dollar for the people that live in those cities. They like their standard of living, they like their own rules, and they like the level of service that they get. The biggest consolidation you could have would be between the city of Orlando and the Orange County. 90% of the public service is there, and if the city wants to talk to us, I'll be happy to listen.
You're next, Ms. Stewart.
I would not want to compromise our EPD department and put any strings or lesser strings on how we deal with our environment by telling them that they must adhere to some of the lesser, more stringent State Department, so that would not be something I'd be interested in looking at. But reforming government departments within our own government, as I've said before, I think that needs to be done. There are so many that do need to be reformed. In the first 100 days in office, this is extremely necessary that we go in and do this efficiency audit and make sure that we have a professional looking at it, but also to put those community committees together, because who knows best how to make the dollar work for the government than those who have to deal with the government. So I think that's an extremely important partnership that we need to strive for. During the hurricanes, I slept down at the Emergency Operations Center for Orange County to make sure that everybody got everything that they needed, their ice, make sure the electric companies were able to get to them, and any of their needs that they needed, I was down there. And that's why I know that there are 2 emergency operations centers, and there's not necessary to have them. They've got the city of Orlando, and then they've got the Orange County one. We didn't sit at the same table. When someone would call about the city of Orlando, we had to refer them over to the city of Orlando. We didn't know what happened over there once it got there. It was just unnecessary. Parks and Recreation, we don't need 2 of those departments. We could even consider code enforcement of making it more easier for everybody if they had similar code enforcement rules. That's a very important area I think we need to look at. And I do think all the cities of all of Orange County are struggling now. You've seen in the paper where they're raising their taxes. Well, they're raising their taxes because they can't provide the service. So I would think this is an excellent time for us all to sit down and try to figure out how we all could save some money. And I think their ears are going to be a little bit more open to that now in this economic time than it ever was.
Let me start with Mr. Siegel first. Several of the questions I've got about jobs. Is the city and the county, you talk about the city since you're running for mayor, where have they been proactive in bringing in jobs into what sector, and what jobs are, if you can talk about it, on the horizon that may be coming in that is going to be beneficial for the community?
You're asking about the county?
I'll go for the city, that's fine. I'll ask the county, but for the city of Orlando right now.
Well, the city of Orlando has their own economic development shop, and I really not sure.
Well, I want both for the city and for the county. Sometimes there's some in East Orlando, then in west, or east part of the county, excuse me.
As mayor, 2 things. I've mentioned modeling and simulation. There's 14,000 people around here that work in that industry, $80,000 average wage. I went to Washington with a group of 80 leaders, met with Congress about a month ago, military leaders trying to expand that industry. The sky is the limit. That is beyond the military reach. It is moving into medical simulation. The digital media industry, I just had a symposium on that. The sky is the limit with that. Again, great industries, and most of them here in East Orange County. But we want to develop West Orange County and Northwest Orange County also. Tourism is huge. Our convention center is 2nd largest in the country size, and attendance. We just landed 2 more great conventions here, one of them for the next 10 years. So a lot of economic development work going on. I think that that's job one of the next Orange County mayor.
I'll go with you, Ms. Jacobs. For example, like in Brevard County, everybody focuses on NASA, but there's not much in the south part of the county. So some people, according to the question here, there's not being enough focus. You know, there's too much on the city instead of the outskirts of that. What have you seen that that needs? What kind of jobs do we need to bring in here instead of, some would say, instead of, you know, the restaurant and the tourism sector? What other jobs can come into the area?